I never planned to fall in love again at 47. That wasn't part of my carefully arranged life, my meticulously curated existence. But life, I've learned, has little regard for our plans. It's and 6 months since I met Jack Harmon. And tonight, sitting alone on my veranda as the Spanish moss sways in the warm savanna breeze, I find myself needing to put these feelings into words, to make sense of how everything changed so quickly, so unexpectedly. The evening we met was like any other gallery opening, the soft lighting creating halos around my carefully selected pieces, the quiet murmur of conversation punctuated by occasional laughter, the delicate clink of wine glasses. I'd been ning these events for years at Montgomery Gallery, my little corner of artistic salvation on Ton Street. That night, we were featuring Sarah Landry's abstract collection, bold strokes of colors, that somehow captured the essence of coastal Georgia in ways photographs never could. I remember feeling tired. My feet were aching in the heels I'd chosen more for appearance than comfort, and I'd been smiling so long my cheeks hurt. Divorce does that to you, makes you overcompensate, as if proving to the world that you're thriving even when you're just surviving. 5 years since David and I signed those papers, and I was still performing happiness rather than feeling it. Then I saw him, standing, alone before Sarah's centerpiece, Storm Surge. Tall, with dark hair flecked with silver at the plugs, dressed in a navy blazer that looked lived in rather than pressed for the occasion. There was something different about the way he studied the painting, not with the quick, superficial glance of someone checking a cultural box, but with genuine curiosity, as if trying to decode a message meant specifically for him. "What do you see in it?" I asked, approaching him with another flute of champagne to offer. It was part of my job, engaging with patrons, but something made me genuinely curious about his answer. He turned, and I was struck by his eyes, deep-set and intense, the color of the antic on an overcast day. He didn't smile immediately, which was refreshing. In the South, people assume reflexively, politeness embedded in our DNA. "Chaos with purpose," he answered, accepting the pain, like someone captured a storm but found the pattern in it. He paused, studying me now in sight. "Teed of the canvas." "I'm Jack Harmon." "Eleanor Montgomery," I replied, extending my hand. "Frey!" "Ians call me Ellie." "And which should I call you?" There was a hint of amusement in his voice as if testing boundaries. "Let's start with Eleanor and see where things go." That's when he smiled. Low, genuine curve of his lips that reached his eyes and created small creases at their corners. In that moment, I felt something I hadn't in years, a flutter of possibility. We talked for over an hour that night, moving from painting to painting, as I explained Sarah's vision and technique. He asked thoughtful questions, not to impress, but to understand. When I mentioned being the owner, not just a curator, surprise flickered across his face. "Most people assume I inherited it, or that it's my husband's," I said with a wry smile. "And did you?" "Is it?" "No on both counts. Bought it 10 years ago. When the previous owner retired. And divorced 5 years ago. The gallery is entirely mine." "Impressive," he said, and I believed he meant it. "Though I'm sorry about the divorce." I shrugged. "It was for the best. We became different people than the ones who fell in love in college. It happens." "That it does," he replied, and something in his tone made me wonder about his own story. As the out thinned, Jack helped me collect abandoned glasses, a small gesture that spoke volumes. When only the staff remained clearing up, he lingered. "Would you like to get coffee sometime?" he asked. "Dear, ECT and unaffected. I'd love to hear more about how you built this place. Under normal circumstances, I might have declined. I'd convinced myself I was content with my life, my gallery, my small circle of friends, my book club on Wednesdays, my quiet townhouse in the historic district. Dating seemed die like unnecessary complication. But there was something about Jack Harmon that made me curious. Do you like that? I heard myself say, surprising us both. 2 days later, we met at Gallery Espresso on Chippewa Square. I arrived early, choosing a table near the windows where I could watch the tourists, taking photos on the bench from Forrest Gump. Jack arrived precisely on time, carrying a weather sheet, leather messenger bag, and wearing the same unaffected confidence. Over coffee, I learned he was a novelist with 2 published books, literary fiction that had earned critical acclaim, if not commercial. Success. He divided his time between Tybee Island and book tours, finding the solitude of the Gia coast perfect for writing. And what do you write about? I asked, genuinely interested. People who find themselves at crossroads, he answered. Moments when life forces a choice that will define everything that follows. You make it sound so dramatic, I teased. Most of life's decisions feel mundane in the moment. But they're not, are they? Even the small ones accumulate, creating the path of our lives. He leaned forward, those stormy eyes intent. Like your gallery. One day you dead to buy it, and now it defines so much of who you are. His insight startled me. We talked for the 3 hours that day, the conversation flowing without effort. I told him about growing up in Augusta, about my mother taking me to museums as a child, about studying art history at Savannah College of Art and Design, about meeting David in my junior year, about the gradual disintegration of what I'd thought would be forever. We never fought, I explained, stirring my 3rd cup of coffee. That was part of the problem. We just drifted into separate rooms, separate lives, separate dreams. Until one day I realized I couldn't remember the last meaningful conversation we'd had. Jack nodded. Dio, standing in his expression. Sometimes silence is more damaging than conflict. What about you? I finally asked. You've heard my story. A shadow crossed his face. Married young to my college sakasa, Yothart. She died 8 years ago. Cancer. He said it matter-of-factly, but I saw the grief still, lingering behind his eyes. I'm so sorry, I said, instinctively reaching for his hand across the toy. Blee. His fingers wrapped around mine, warm and strong. It's why I started writing, actually, to process it all. That first touch, his hand on mine, sent a current through me that I wasn't prepared for. I withdrew, not ready to acknowledge what was happening. But as we parted ways outside the coffee shop, he asked if he could see me again. I'd like that, I said for the 2nd time, and felt the round shifting beneath me. Our courtship, if you could call it that, progressed slowly. Jack would see home to Savannah from Tybee Island every few days. Sometimes we'd have dinner at one of the restaurants, Nilas along River Street, watching cargo ships glide by on the Savannah River. Other times we'd simply walk through the 22 historic squares, talking about art and literature and life beneath pies of live oaks. I learned that Jack was 52, that he taught creative writing workshops, scientally at Armstrong State, that he had a scar on his left forearm from falling out of a treehouse as a child, that he preferred bourbon to wine, morning to evening, mountains to beaches, despite living on an island, that he could quote obscure poetry from memory and did crossword puzzles in ink. Age, he learned that I sang in the shower but nowhere else, that I could identify artists by brushstroke, alone, that I kept a garden of heirloom roses behind my townhouse, that I was terrified of flying but dreamed of seeing the great European museums, that I still called my mother in Augusta every Sunday night, even though we had little in common besides blood. 3 weeks after we met, he kissed me odd night on my doorstep. It was a gentle kiss, questioning rather than demanding, but it awakened some thing in me I thought had died with my marriage. I invited him inside, and we sat on my sofa talking, until 3 in the morning, his arm around my shoulders, my head eventually finding its way to Ree's against his chest. I should go, he said finally, reluctantly. You could stay, I offered, surprising myself. He smiled, touching my cheek with tenderness. Not tonight. When it happens between us. You, component placement Ellie, and I think we both know it will. I don't want it to be because we're tired or caught up in a moment. I want it to be a choice we're both fully present for. The fact that he called me Ellie el nam sao, Aunt Eleanor, wasn't lost on me, nor was the respect in his decision. I walked him to the door feeling both disappointed and grateful. The next morning, I woke to a text message. Thinking of you in the hoary morning light? Dinner tonight? That evening, he drove us to a small restaurant on Wilmington Island, zrenia away from the tourist areas. Over seafood caught that morning, I found myself telling him things I had never told anyone, about my fears that I'd wasted years in a marriage that was dead long before it ended, about my occasional loneliness that no amount of busyness could fill, about my worry that at 47, my chances for real love had passed. Do you really believe that? He asked, reaching across the table to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. I did, I admitted, until recently. That night when he brought me home, I didn't have to invite him in. We both knew. His kiss at the door was different. Sure, hungry, full of promise. We barely made it to the bedroom, shedding clothes and inhibitions along the way. Making love with Jack was nothing like I remembered with David. There was urgency, yes, but also tenderness, a wordless conversation of desire and response. Afterward, lying in the tangle of sheets with his arm around me, I felt tears build behind my eyes. What is it? He asked, concern in his voice. I'd forgotten, I whispered, how it feels to really want someone, to be wanted. He pulled me closer, pressing his lips to my forehead. I want you, Ellie Montgomery. Ollie, L of you. He stayed the night, and in the morning made me coffee and toast while I showered. Standy. Nung in my kitchen, in just his jeans, hair tousled from sleep. He looked like he belonged there. It, terrified me how much I wanted him to. The weeks that followed were a revelation. Jack began staying with me 3 or 4 nights a week, keeping some clothes in my closet, a toothbrush in my bathroom. We fell into a rhythm that felt both new and familiar. Cooking dinner together, reading in Companiona, blue silence, his writing while I handled gallery business from home, slow dancing in my living room, to Sam Cooke records. But it wasn't all perfect. Jack had demons I was just beginning to understand. The grief that sometimes woke him in the night, the pressure of a looming book deadline that made withdraw into himself. I had my own issues, insecurities about aging in a world obsessed with youth. Зрение страха, полагаться на кого-то снова, только чтобы остаться один. Our first real fight came 2 months in, when he canceled our weekend plans last minute because his agent had arranged an important meeting in New York. You could have asked me first, I said, hurt evident in my voice. Asked you? Ellie, his is my career. I didn't think I needed permission. It's not about permission. It's about consideration. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. I don't want to become the kind of couple that has to consult on every decision. That's suffocating. There's a difference between consultation and information, I replied, my voice rising. Between independence and disconnect. The words hung between us, too close to my experience with David for comfort. Jack must have seen it in my face, BK. Oz's expression softened. This isn't the same as your marriage, he said quietly. Isn't it? It is starting the same way, small distances that grow into canyons. No. He crossed the room, taking my hands in his. I'm not David, and you're not the same woman you were then. We can do better. Didn't go to New York. Instead, we spent the weekend on Tybee Island at his small beach house. Walking along the shore, talking about our fears, about what we wanted from each other, from ourselves. It was the most honest conversation I'd had in my life. In bed that night, with the sound of waves tc through the open window, he whispered, I love you, Ellie. I didn't plan on it, but I do. I pressed, my face against his chest, breathing in the scent of him. salt air and soap, and something uniquely sio. I love you too, I said, the words both frightening and freeing. God help me, I do. The follow wing months weren't without challenges. My friends had opinions about Jack. Some thought he was exact, lie what I needed. Others worried I was moving too fast after years of independence. Jack's isolated. Writing life sometimes clashed with my social obligations as a gallery owner. We had to navigate the complicated geography of two established adults trying to create space for each other. But there we perfect moments too. Jack surprising me with a weekend trip to the High Museum in Atlanta, knowing how much I loved their photography collection. Introducing him to my mother, who took me aside to Hisper. He looks at you like you're his favorite painting. Finding the dedication in his newest new script. For Ellie, who taught me that second chapters can be better than the first. Last week, as we walked through Forsyth Park under the spring blossoms, Jack stopped beneath the famous fountain. He didn't kneel, which I appreciated, but he did take both my hands in his. I'm not asking for Ver, he said, his voice steady but vulnerable. We both know life doesn't offer guarantees, but I am asking for every day we can have, every morning and night, every argument and reconciliation, ever. I joy and sorrow. Will you marry me, Eleanor Montgomery? I looked at this man, this unexpected gift that had appeared in my gallery on an ordinary evening, and felt my heart swell with a love I never thought I'd experience again. Yes, I answered, simple and true. Yes to all of it. So here I sit my veranda, 6 months after that first meeting, with Jack asleep inside. Tomorrow we'll start to ling people about our engagement. There will be congratulations and concerns, plans to make and lenges to face. Jack's book tour starts next month, and I have a major exhibition to prepare for. We are still figuring out which house to keep and which to sell. We don't have everything solved, but as I watch the stars emerge over Savannah's skyline, I find myself overwhelmed with gratitude. For a pain that shaped me, for the loneliness that taught me my own strength, for the unexpected joy of finding love when I'd stopped looking for it. They say life begins at 40, mine began again at 4. Tydwa 70. W galerii w środę wieczorem, kiedy mężczyzna z burzowymi oczami widział sens w chaosie I possibility in me. I never planned to fall in love again at 47, but thank God I did.